There's a little bit of a self-sacrifice that comes into teachers and principals. There's almost a culture of, I'm going to work the hardest and the longest and the latest because it shows how much I care about the kids or the job or whatever. It's kind of like when you on a plane and they say that the oxygen mask comes down, you put it on the adults first, right? Before the kids. And so, yeah, taking a step back from that and saying, no, we're going to take care of ourselves first. And so we're going to do a better job because of that. And we're going to last longer in this job and persist because we are taking care of ourselves first. We don't have to leave the profession to take care of ourselves. We can do both.
Welcome to Oxygen for Educators. This is Michelle Kinder. I'm one of your hosts. We're going to be looking at the hard truth that students need more, and simultaneously the adults in the building are feeling under-resourced and overextended. Join us as we elevate the voices of people across the country doing this work. We'll be looking at anxieties, overwhelm, burnout, joy, commitment, and everything in between. We're glad you're here. This space is for you. Hi, everyone. I'm Michelle Kinder.
And I'm Chris Phelps.
We're excited to be with you today and for you to hear this interview. Chris, tell them what they're up for.
Okay, we are excited to introduce you to Tom Brandt, who happens to be an old friend of Michelle's. He also has 26 years of teaching and campus leadership experience. He's earned a master principal designation in Dallas ISD. He has led the #1 ranked elementary school and middle school in the state of Texas, according to the U.S. News and World Report. And most recently, he earned his doctoral degree with his dissertation topic being a case study on a principal resiliency program to prevent burnout, which is such a relevant topic today and for this podcast. So we're thrilled to have him on. I would say that some of my favorite things about listening to this interview that were not in his bio that jumped out at me is that he actually practices self-care. He doesn't just talk about self-care, which is remarkable. He's also not afraid to show his vulnerability, which you'll experience, and I loved experiencing. He also believes that the key to life is a sense of humor and just being with the kids. And those two things just warmed my heart. So I'm excited to let our listeners, Ricardo, listen to him.
Ricardo, shout out to Ricardo, our most loyal listener.
Our most loyal listener. We love him.
We love him so much. He doesn't realize how much we think of him as we're doing these because we know he's gonna be on the other end of it. So nice.
Yeah. So shall we turn it over to you and Tom?
Let's do it. Awesome.
Okay.
Welcome, Tom. Very glad to have you.
Thank you.
Very
Pleasure to be
excited to pick your brain. For the listeners, full disclosure, Tom and I go way back, but we haven't gotten to talk too much recently and limited in terms of like our professional lenses on things. So this will be really new territory with an old friend, which is my favorite.
Good, me too.
Well, tell us your story, thinking back to kind of little Tom and how you even got into education. How did this go down for you?
That's a great question. Little Tom, I don't think even knew what I was going to do with my life. I don't remember thinking about being a teacher or, how I got to here. It was only because I was in college and I knew I loved history, and I knew I loved working with kids. I had a little bit of experience with that, with coaching and that kind of thing. And so I thought, I want to make the world a better place kind of thing, not to sound too cheesy, but that's really what it was. And so I had enough credits to be a history teacher, and so I did that. Wife and I packed up the Toyota Corolla in 1998 and we got married and drove down to Colleyville, Texas. And I was a history teacher for 9 years. So social studies composite, which means you teach all of them, government, economics, history, that kind of thing. So world geography. And after about 9 years, I had a great run there. That's the longest I've ever been anywhere in my career. But I was there for 9 years and I decided, you know what? I want to do something it was a middle class community. All those kids, 2-parent households, and income levels were solid. And so I wanted to go someplace where I knew I could do even more good, with the world. And so I decided to move to Dallas ISD, and taught for a year, and then moved into administration, assistant principal roles, and then got some training to be a principal of an elementary school. I'd never been worked in an elementary school before, but I did a 6-month training called a Fellows Program, where I learned from a veteran elementary school principal how to be an elementary school principal. And so then I took over Preston Hollow Elementary for 4 years, from 2014 to 2018. And then an opportunity came up to be the Travis principal, which is a Vanguard Academy for talented and gifted kids. And I did that for 5 years, both schools of which I got to be the principal with my daughter, who was born within that journey. She was a kindergarten with me at Preston Hollow and then became a 4th grader at Travis, and she's still there. And then the next step in my career was to mentor the principal of Skyline High School, which is the largest high school in Dallas ISD, about around 4,000 kids. And so I was a veteran principal, and he was fairly new to the principalship, and so I was there as sort of a mentor to him. And then after about 8 months, this position opened up, and that is the executive director over the Hillcrest Vertical Team, which means I oversee Hillcrest High School, Franklin Middle School, and then 5 elementary schools, one of which is Preston Hollow Elementary, which is my old school that I used to be the principal of. So now I get to go back and see old staff members, and it's a great fit because I was a member of this community as a principal, and now I'm back as the executive director. And so within that journey, I got my master's degree at University of North Texas, and then I think one of the reasons I'm here is because I went to University of Texas and through the Cooperative Superintendency Program, which coaches you how to be a superintendent. And then I decided to do my dissertation on a principal self-care program called Principal Impact Collaborative, which is PIC in North Texas, which trains principals how to be resilient in their roles so that they can be principals even longer, because it is a very tough job. And we'll get into that, I'm sure, a little bit later. But I received my doctorate last May from the University of Texas.
Congratulations.
So all that in a nutshell. Yeah, thanks.
I love it. When we're socializing, Tom makes all of us call him doctor. It's very awkward, but
for everybody.
Yeah, we're going to let it slide for, what do you think, 18 months?
Probably. Yeah, probably.
At least.
Yeah, it's awkward. Even at the grocery store, I have to remind folks. And, just when I'm out and about. Yeah, it's doctor. Yeah, it's so silly.
You're that guy.
Yeah, that guy. It's so silly.
So did you stumble into your dissertation topic? Was it a passion for you? Like, how did you decide that was what you wanted to contribute in terms of a dissertation?
Yeah, so my first year as a principal was really rough. So I got, as I mentioned before, I hadn't been in elementary schools, and I went through a training program, but it was just a 6-month quick training program. And I hadn't worked in an elementary school. I hadn't been even an assistant principal or a teacher or anything. And so kind of thrown into the role, not really knowing what to do. And I felt like, I neglected a lot of things in that first year, family and myself, and I really struggled. And I thought during the year about, can I do this? Can I maintain this? Is this good for me? Is this good for my family? And I considered backing out of the role. And it wasn't until later on I had the success and these other things that came along with these other training programs that I went through to look back and say, I wish more people who step into the principalship had the training that I had, but right away, and a focus on self-care and a focus on balancing your life and resiliency in the role, not to leave it or not to talk people out of going into such a stressful role, but there's ways to cope with that stress, and there's strategies and techniques to cope with it that I learned later on. And so I wanted to do a study about just that. Like, how does a principal balance all these things? There's so many things on your plate. As a principal, you're in charge of the climate and culture of your campus. There's staff surveys, and there's parent surveys, and there's student surveys. There's a student achievement on your campus, which you're really held accountable for. There's the quality of instruction. You're in charge of going through your classrooms and making sure the quality of instruction is on point. There's so many things. And then the little things that happen along the way, the crisis that pops up, or so many things that happen to a principal. And you've got to be able to juggle that and balance all that. And it's a lot. And so that's why I decided to do that. And people look to the principal on their campus to set the tone for everybody else. And so I feel it's kind of like when you are on a plane and they say that the oxygen mask comes down, you put it on the adults first, right? And so before the kids. And so taking care of the principal and having the principal take care of themselves first can make a major impact on a campus. And so I want to do a study about what's working and what can we further practice to make sure that really good principals stay in their roles and they don't burn out.
It's so interesting because in the absence of that, your most healthy, boundaried people are going to flee these settings because it's like not sustainable or it doesn't work for their family or whatever. So, so it sounds like what you're offering is a way to keep the most boundaried, healthy, talented people in these really important roles that impact the entire community.
Yeah, that's a good way of saying it. There is a little bit of a self-sacrifice that comes into even teachers and principals. There's almost a culture of I'm gonna work the hardest and the longest and the latest because it shows how much I care about the kids or the job or whatever. And so, taking a step back from that and saying, no, we're going to take care of ourselves first because we care about ourselves, and so we're going to do a better job because of that, and we're going to last longer in this job and persist because we are taking care of ourselves first. We don't have to leave the profession to take care of ourselves. We can do both. You can have this job that is wonderful and the sense of purpose that I wanted when I first started this journey, making the world a better place. But you don't have to sacrifice yourself and your family to do that. You can do both, but there are certain strategies you have to do to maintain because it's just a stress level it really becomes overwhelming if you let it.
Amazing. What came out of your dissertation that surprised you or delighted you? Or depressed you?
No, I don't think anything that depressed me. The only thing, there should be more programs that focus on these things. And people should be talking about this more because burnout is a real thing. The churn that happens when a principal leaves the principalship causes turnover, and you have to start over with a new principal, with a new vision, everybody has to get to know each other again. It creates more problems. So the thing that delights me is people getting together who are also, the principal is very alone on their campus. They're the only person with that job. And so through the PIC program, so this program that I evaluated, that I went through myself, you are in a space where you're off campus and you're meeting with other principals who are sharing the same workload and stress level that you're experiencing. And so you're there as a support group.
Yeah.
And that's the thing that kept coming out through my interviews as I worked on my dissertation is the bonds that were formed with principals being able to talk with vulnerability with other principals about what they're going through, and people that understand. Even when you have a coach or a mentor, if they're not a principal, if they haven't sat in the seat, they don't really know what that principal is going through, and so other principals do that. And so when you have a group that you meet off campus and you get to shut your phone off and talk to other principals about their problems and solutions and what they're going through in a vulnerable space, in a trusted space, that's probably one of the things that the principals I interviewed got the most out of it, was having a cohort of their peers that they could discuss the principalship with.
Yeah, amazing. And even if there are listeners who don't have access to a program like that, just that takeaway of like, are you creating some safe spaces with peers where you can fully let your hair down, fully check yourself, normalize some of the struggles so you don't go into those inevitable shame spirals when we're locked in, between our two ears and we're not actually sharing our experience with other people who are dealing with similar things.
Yeah. It's a support group is what it is.
Yeah.
And no one else really, you have your assistant principals on campus, but they're not in the seat. You have your boss that you can talk to, but they're your boss. And so, and they've been through the principalship. But you also are hesitant about sharing too much, too, about things that might be not going as well as you wanted them to on a campus, because they have to evaluate you at the end of the year. And so, so getting in a space where you can share really, really what's happening on the campus. And sometimes there's problems on a campus that that don't have solutions or don't have easy solutions. And so having people in the room that understand that and can talk about their own experiences they've had and how they've worked through it, super helpful.
Amazing. Really good. So you've kind of already touched on this, but feel free to pivot to something wildly different or just build on what you're already talking about. But I'm curious what you know now that you didn't know. Is it 26 years that you've been?
Yeah, 26.
So,
Well, it's 20,
yeah.
1998. So, 27.
We're
Long
so
journey.
old.
I know. When did this happen?
I don't know,
When
but
did
it
this happen?
happened.
Yeah.
Mercy. Okay, yeah. What do you know? What do you know now that you wish you had known 26 years ago? Or maybe you just, it's not even a wish you'd known. It's just like, oh wow, that's in focus so differently now than when I started.
Well, I think one thing is putting yourself first. It's super important. There is this culture of self-sacrifice, like I mentioned before, but you're really not there for other people unless you're okay. If you're not okay as the principal, other people are going to look at your face and they're going to look at your demeanor and they're going to look at your tone, and they're not going to be okay because they're going to think it's something that happened with me. And so you've got to make sure you're in a spot where you're okay. And if you're not okay, look for solutions for that. There's a lot of training programs that are out there. Even simple things like an assistant principal, usually a principal gets a role because they're a really good assistant principal and they got attention because of the job they did as an assistant principal. Once you step into the principal role, you've never worked with an office manager, for example. And so, because the assistant principals don't get an office manager on their campus. The principal does.
Right.
But just that relationship there, it sounds trivial, but that person runs your life because everyone goes to the office manager for solutions for things. And so there's another training program called Breakthrough Coach, which sits you down with an office manager and teaches you, how they schedule your day, and has you sign things throughout the day. Just simple things like systems in place. I think that's something I really wish I would have known going into the role. Just how to manage your time, because a million things will fly at you at a moment's notice. Your whole day can change with one email from an angry parent or from the superintendent or from somebody. Your whole plan flies out the window. So someone to help you manage your day is super important. I don't know any other job that's like it, because you have students, you have parents, you have teachers, you have other things that are going on. Like we might have an inclement weather day, how that kind of thing just throws off your whole plan for the week.
Yeah.
Those I don't know any other profession like it. So that would be, number one is taking care of yourself, but number two is just some sort of structure to your day and using your office manager to help you. And with that goes the delegation of other tasks. You don't have to do everything yourself. So I think as a lot of principals fall into the trap, they're well-intentioned, but they don't want to do everything. So making sure you have, and this is another thing that Pick would teach you too, is professional development around how to delegate tasks out, that you don't have to do everything. The best analogy I ever received was about you're a baseball manager now. So you're not playing on the field. You're able to step back in the dugout and you're able to see all the players, and you're observing and you're giving feedback to all the players. But you're not in the game. You're not playing. Because if you're playing, you're not able to see the other players around you. You have to step back. You have to zoom out. In the dugout, you can see the whole game. So that's something I wish I would have known, early on going into it.
Ooh, that's a good analogy. That's a really good visual, because it's so hard for that transition from individual contributor to leader manager is so challenging. I really like that.
Great
baseball.
assistant principals are good firefighters. Like they're in the weeds, they're in there, they're taking care of the discipline issues, and they're monitoring the buses and discipline on the campus and all those other things that are happening. But once you're a principal, you really have to step back.
Yeah.
And so you have to kind of, shut that firefighting thing off and delegate now to your assistant principals or other people on the campus that can handle those things. And then your main job is really to observe how they're doing and giving them feedback. Clear expectations, high accountability, but also just stepping back and observing, giving feedback.
Love it. Love it. Okay, another pivot.
Yeah.
One of the goals of this podcast is to take back the narrative of education from the general population's distortion. So what do you think general population is getting wrong in 2025 about what's actually happening on school campuses?
I don't know about what they're getting wrong.
Or said another way, what do you wish they understood better or got to see firsthand themselves? Like, what would you pump into the narrative of what education is about and the life of educators is about, that maybe is muted in today's conversation outside of the walls of the educator community?
Wow.
Does that make sense?
Yeah. I've been just in it so long. I don't even know what the outside world is saying. I don't. We've got our heads down,
That's part
just
of
working.
your strategy. That's why you're so happy.
Maybe, yeah. Maybe ignorance is bliss. I don't know. We're just working so hard that I know one of the things is funding. There's a lot of talk right now about the funding of public education, and I just I see the struggles that happen with not having enough teachers, not enough staff, not enough quality people. I see all the good that's happening, but I also see the struggle that the campuses have in hiring well-qualified teachers. So, I guess that is the one thing that I think that I would want more people to get behind is the funding of public education, the funding
Beautiful.
of schools.
Yeah.
Because if you're not able to hire high quality teachers, we're not going to have high quality public education. We're just not.
Yeah.
And so the funding has got to be there for resources. And what I mean by resources is people that want to be the profession because it can provide just a quality of life. Sometimes people are working for wages that don't provide for a quality of life. So
Right.
that's one thing. And also buildings. Buildings matter. Broken windows theory. You've got to be able to have your kids walk into a building that conveys the message that we care about your kids. And because no parent wants to drop their kid off at a school that looks old or in disrepair. But the funding's got to be there. So that's one thing that I would say, that people are driving by schools, or if they're hearing critiques about education. One of the major hurdles is we've got a lot of resources out there that are being held up, and we need to fund schools first.
Yeah, I love that. Wow, for having no answer, you hit a home run. I'm going to keep the baseball going. That's about the depth of my
Nice.
capacity. So
Nice,
I'm
nice.
signing off.
Great. That's really funny.
Oh, mercy. Tell us, you've mentioned a couple training programs that have been really useful to you. Any other resources that you're like, oh, this is gold. I wish people knew about this.
Yeah, so I mentioned Breakthrough Coach, principals using their office manager in a way that helps them run the school better. Mentioned PIC, that was my program evaluation for my dissertation, which is about building resiliency in principals with high quality professional development. There's a program that I went through that no longer exists. It was called Teaching Trust, that taught principals about systems for culture and climate, like, for example, teachers standing in the threshold of their doors as they're greeting kids as they come in the classroom and giving handshakes and eye contact and a positive affirmation before they walk in the classroom every single day, which caused me to then stand outside the school and shake hands and learn every kid's name before they walked in the building, which was a hit with parents. But it wasn't for that. It was really to build this culture of a welcoming environment for our kids, to make them feel safe and that they belong, and so their brains are ready to learn.
Right.
And they get that from me as their principal, and they get that from their teachers they walk through the door as well. And then data practices that we learned through that program as well. That program no longer exists, Teaching Trust program, but something like that to help intensive training for principals while they're dealing with all these other things, to really hone in on culture practices and data practices and instructional practices to make sure that their campus is solid. We need more programs like that, but that also takes funding. So yeah, I was I was very, very lucky through my principalship to get training programs, then turn around and come back to campus and implement them. I feel like my staff and my kids were better off because I received that training. But again, funding.
No question. Love it. Can you think of a moment in your career that really tested your resilience as an educator?
Well, my first year, that's when I was contemplating about taking a step back. Like, this is not, but I remember, I had a conversation with my wife about it, and she's like, no, keep going. And so I said, okay, I want to come back and I'll keep going. And I'm so glad I did. If I would have backed away, I wouldn't have had these great experiences I've had now. But that first year really, really tested it. This is why I was so passionate about writing about resilience and how we need more of that. But that's what really tested me. Can I do this? And there were so many things. It was so overwhelming. I felt like I was drowning. But it wasn't until I received these trainings. So one of the things that I would love for new principals to have all the trainings that I had the benefit of over the course of the years. You're asking about training programs. This is over a 10-year experience as a principal that I was able to have these trainings. How great would it be if before you become a principal or during that first year, you get these intensive training programs? I had to, reach out and search for these things on my own, and they were available, which I'm so grateful for. But having programs where you that it's not really maybe even an option that you go through these because you're going to be a better principal because of it. Yeah. But things like how to use an office manager and things to build culture and climate on your campus and data practices and quality of instruction, intensive training, you're kind of left up to your own to search out for these programs and through word of mouth sometimes and through your executive director. But so I'm fortunate where I can pass these things down to the principal that I lead now. But I think training programs that right from the get-go, so you don't have to go through that struggle of should I or shouldn't I be in this role because it's too much. You're being trained as you go.
Yeah, so you can create the conditions under which you can thrive in an incredibly stressful position.
Yes, because being a great assistant principal doesn't necessarily mean that you're ready for the principalship. Right. And so sometimes I've seen people get thrown in. And our district does a great job of, there is a program where they're stepped through. I just think there always could be more done to help principals later on be successful, even the ones that are struggling at first. I was a struggling principal at first, and it turned out that I had some pretty good success later on, but it's only because of the training programs that I benefited from and then turned around and brought back to the campus. So my hope is for more availability of programs that take money, again, resources that more kids would benefit from principals who are highly trained.
Love it. And, there will be people listening who are working for administrators like you that have their eye on that ball. And then there's going to be people listening that it's going to be on them to really drive the bus on lifelong professional development opportunities that serve and prepare them. Yeah. What's your advice to people who maybe are not in a system where they're getting looked out for, but they want to at least try to look out for themselves and find those PDs and stuff?
Yeah. My best advice for them is to seek out a successful principal and what they went through. Like, what training programs did they go through? My experience was, breakthrough coach with office manager pick, teaching trust that doesn't exist anymore. But what in their district, wherever this is reaching, has worked for veteran principals. And if there's nothing available in their area, I would build networks with the successful principals, even if it's outside their district, to reach out, to do some research on who's doing a great job as a principal, who's been there for a while, and reach out to those people as support. Build your own network. So this program, Principal Impact Collaborative, would take you off campus and put you in a group with other principals. But I would say if that's not available in your area, do that yourself, and work with your supervisor to get off campus, go see other schools, and go pick the brains of some successful principals, build your own cohort of peers. That is huge. Even if you're a first-year principal, get off your campus, go seek out some successful principals. It'll make them stronger too, and because principals don't do that very often. It's very hard to get them off campus to go and learn from other people. You feel like you have to be on your campus all the time, because if something goes wrong, then you don't want to be off campus. But you have to for your own well-being and professional growth. You have to go see what else is out there, see how other principals are doing it, especially successful ones, and then bring those back to your own campus. So if there's not a program available, you kind of got to take the reins in yourself and go do it yourself.
That's great advice.
Mm-hmm.
When you were thinking about coming on the podcast, is there anything you wanted to make sure we covered before we go to the next segment?
I think, just if this is reaching people that are in the principalship, just the importance of self-care is number one. Just, everything you read, it's nothing new, but doing it, there's certain martyrdom that comes with the principalship. So just making sure they're taking time to breathe, mindfulness, exercise, hydrating, drinking water, having lunch, feeding yourself, fueling yourself, all the things that we all know about health, but you got to do it. You got to do it. And if that takes an accountability partner, get an accountability partner. But you've got to do it, not only for yourself, but for your school community, because people can tell. Like, if you're not doing well, other people on your campus are not going to do well, and that's going to trickle to kids. And so if you're not doing it for yourself, do it for your kids on your campus, because it matters.
Yeah. It's the opposite of selfish. Like, it puts you in a nervous system state where you can actually show up, and then it gives implicit permission to the rest of the faculty to take care of themselves too, which it doesn't matter what you say. If you're not doing it, that will be the stronger message. So the ripple effect of a leader that understands that if they're not caring for their own nervous system, their own self, the system is hurt by that. It's huge. Yeah. And we can take it from someone who did a dissertation on the topic. Yeah. Doctor, excuse me.
Yeah, right. Yeah, but it's so important, because and you're exactly right, because you're modeling that for other people too. So if you're getting off campus, even for lunch sometimes, like model that for people to get off the campus. You don't have to stay on the campus. Get off the campus. That might make you better in the afternoon, which could build resilience throughout time if those things are happening. Fuel your body. Go for a walk during your breaks. Walk outside for a little while. At the end of the day, go home. People sometimes will brag about how late they are staying at the school. We got to stop that. Yeah. Go home. Be with your family, or go chill out, because you'll last longer in the profession. You'll be a better teacher or assistant principal or principal because of it.
Okay, I'm almost slipping into gossiping now more than Perfect. Serious questions. But what is your theory about where that weird equation came in terms of how much I suffer equals how much I care? Why do people in education, why are we sucked into that? Helping professions are sucked into that mentality as well. What's your theory about that?
I don't know. I don't know. I don't know where that became valuable, or saying that. I don't know if other people perceive that as valuable, but other people, they want to say how long they're working or how late they're up, or I don't know where that came from. But I know it's very prevalent in education. It is. It was for me as a teacher, as an assistant principal, as a principal. So, yeah. So more of these kind of conversations where we talk about it's okay. Go home, but that's going to be modeled for people above us, that it's okay. It's okay. But I don't know where it came from. I have no idea. But we got to squash it, and I think this is a good first step. I'm going to squash it.
Love it. Okay, you ready for some rapid fires?
Yeah, let's go.
Okay, no wrong answers, just whatever comes to your mind.
Okay.
This is going to sound like a plant, but this is a question we ask other people too, so I swear it's not.
Okay.
But do you have a go-to song that gives you oxygen?
You're so funny.
I swear it's not a plant. What's
so
your
funny.
go-to song that other educators should add to their playlist?
Oh, wow. Gosh, you want me to go Garth Brooks. I don't know if
I have personal insight
we do
into
inside jokes
Tom's
on here. I don't know if
karaoke days.
that's so funny. Yeah, I mean, so I can't get that out of my head now. So there's a song, the dance. For me, this is going to be over at some point. Retirement is coming up, and so, that's the one that's coming to mind right now. As we're talking about my journey and all these things that have happened and all the ups and downs of my career, and all I've learned, it's going to come to a close eventually. And so, I'm just super grateful that I've had this opportunity. And now, thank you for allowing me to pass on some of the things that I learned the hard way. And, hopefully other people can benefit from that. And, that's the next leg of my journey is, it's not over completely, but now I have a chance to pass on whatever I've learned.
Yeah. Which is no small thing, and it's part of why your advice to look for successful principals, leaders, and pick their brain. Like most people are delighted to pour into people coming after them, and really would welcome those conversations. So nice. Yeah.
That's the other part you talk about, culture of sacrificing yourself. There's also a culture of I'm going to do it myself. I'm going to get in my hole, and I'm just going to power through it, not ask for help. But that's asking for help is one of the best things you can do.
So good. Okay, what helps you reset that would surprise the people who know you?
Yeah. In the morning, I just chill out time. That's the time that I get just to myself. And so a cup of coffee and just hang out, just breathe, try to think about anything. So, and that's something I learned to pick too, was the mindfulness and just even your posture and what you're thinking about. That's what I do to recharge. It's not people. People might think that know me, might think it's people that recharge me. It's not. It's alone time where I think about nothing, or at least try to.
Yeah, just giving yourself some time to kind of tune in to the knowing that's deeper than the mental facet knowing.
Oh, you said it so much better than I did. That's true. Yes, that's exactly it. Yeah.
Love it. What gives you hope? What gives you hives?
Hives? Wow. What gives me hope? What gives me hives? Okay, let's start with hope first. There's just so many good people in this profession. I see so many. I'm able to zoom out now because I'm an executive director, and so I get to see other schools and what's happening in other schools, and other principals and the work they do. And so I get to form a team of principals in this little cohort. So we take turns going to each other's campuses now, and so I force them to, all these things we're talking about. I get to do that with a team of 7 principals, and I get them off campus, and I go force them to be in a room together, and we go walk each other's campuses, and they love it. And yes, for the Christmas party, we just did karaoke, in case you're wondering. It was super fun. So, but those types of things, I get to do that. And so my principals I'm extremely lucky because they're a great group of people who care, and they're super smart, and they're doing great work in their schools, and we're hoping to have straight A's across our campuses on the accountability ratings, and they can do it too because they're that good. But that gives me hope. There's really good people doing the work out there.
Yeah.
What gives me hives? Gosh, I don't know. I don't want to get political, but I guess politics gives me hives. I worry a little bit about politically. I'm not worried about the people that are in it right now. And I see that gives me hope, but the hives is future and where it's going.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. And education is right at the bullseye of some of that harm. It's just the facts.
Yeah. So I worry. But
okay.
I'm also optimistic, though. I'm a student of history, and so I've seen this country go through so many horrible things, and come out on the other side. And it's just so I'm optimistic too.
I love hearing that from your history lens. That is really encouraging.
I just finished a book on the Civil War. When I was in the cabin in Broken Bow over the break, I finished a book on Fort Sumter, the start of the Civil War. And this country went through a civil war at one time. We went through world wars. We went through a Great Depression. We've been through 9/11. We've been through so many things. So I'm optimistic we get on the other side of things, and we'll be stronger because of it.
Yeah, love that. All right, so this is Chris, who you met, who's the co-host of this, and her favorite question is, if you could etch a message on a stone tablet that would be found in 500 years, what would you say?
In 500 years? I mean, I have nothing original.
People need to go to YouTube, because as you were thinking, you were literally posed as the thinker.
Yeah, that's true. I should be down like this.
Yes.
This is funny. My dad was always a real quiet guy. He's a hard worker and led by example, but there wasn't a lot of words of wisdom. So I had this little book, Life's Little Instruction book. So I'm thinking about things from there, but it's all plagiarism because it's not my original ideas.
That's okay.
Things like that. But don't sweat the small stuff. It's all small stuff. That type of thing, which is so true. So I'm going to steal it and I'm going to use it as my own. So I'm going to etch that on the stone because we shouldn't.
I love it.
Yeah. It's all small stuff. It's all small stuff.
It's a truth that will prevail. Yeah, we can get sucked into the mayhem, or we can pull up and pay attention to how we're relating to the mayhem versus trying to control the mayhem, which is a really different way to live.
Yeah. My kid is healthy today.
Yeah.
She went to school. I watched her walk into school today.
Yeah.
That's great.
Yeah.
All the rest, meh.
Question, did she wear a coat?
You know what?
Freezing here.
You know what? She didn't.
No, coats are apparently not a thing among the youth.
It's so funny you say that, because as she got out of the car, she's walking by I said, "Where's your coat?" And now I'm feeling because I look in the back seat, there's no coat. I'm like, you got out of the house that way? How'd you get out of the house that way? So now I'm that parent? I used to be that judgmental parent.
I think we're all that parent now. Our youngest is 18, and she left this morning at 6:30 for dance, and walked out the door, gave a little yelp. You want a coat? No, absolutely. I don't think it's a thing anymore. It's so weird.
A thing. Oh my gosh. Although if we did send her with a coat, it'd be in the lost and found by now.
Exactly. Yes, good point. It would
she
be
just throws it in the hallway. What is this? What is this on my shoulders? I'm going to throw this in the hallway. It's in the garbage.
Exactly.
I don't understand it.
I love it. I don't either. It seems punishing, but
I've got 6 layers on right now.
Yes.
It's cold outside.
Yes, it's so cold. Okay, last question.
Okay.
Unless you have something you want to add, but last question from us. Is there a mantra, saying, prayer, something that rolls around in your head on a regular basis that grounds you or resources you?
God, I think we just touched on that in the last one. It's not that serious. It's not that serious. Jerry Seinfeld he was saying something the other day. It was like a little YouTube clip or something about all the people that you care about, what they think. They're not going to be here in 30, 40 years. So every time I'm in a stressful situation, I'm like, nobody that I know is going to be around in 30, 40. It doesn't matter, Yeah. But I try to balance that with a career that we have to make sure these kids are okay though too. So that's a balance in my head. Don't take life too seriously. And don't take myself too seriously, doctor. Yeah. I said to say doctor in my brain, they call me doctor. But no, all these things, don't take yourself too seriously. Don't take life too seriously. You got to have fun. And that, and we've had fun. You got to do that. You got to create that balance. Things are so stressful and so serious sometimes, and you've got to take it seriously. But you also have to create that a time in your life to make memories and be present in the moment. I have to remind myself too when I bring work home with me. Sometimes I stop and I'm looking at my wife and my daughter and okay, you got to hold this for a second. This is going to last for 2 seconds, and then it's gone. Like yesterday, she was a 2-year-old, and now she's 12.
Yes.
And I know for your kids too, they grew up so fast. It's crazy.
So fast.
So, we just have to hold on to those moments and do the best we can as human beings, take care of one another. But, this is all going to be, doesn't last, It's all going to be over at some point. So make the most of what we can. Make memories.
That's such good wisdom. That wisdom, kind of moved into my bone marrow. And I do think people, it's a mistake to think that you can't do deadly serious work in the world, but that the best way you do it is to not take too much else serious.
Yeah.
So that you're coming at it vibrating in a way. This sounds cuckoo pants, but I'm comfortable with that. Vibrating in a way that that it's actually a fair fight. Because if you come at these deadly serious issues that will not be solved in our lifetime, but we're dedicated to working on with the same density, then we don't really, it's not a fair fight. But what I hear you saying is if you can do this serious work in the world, but keep yourself light, keep your energy buoyant, and is that a word? That sounds more like bouillon,
No, buoyant. That's great.
It is a word? Okay.
Perfect.
Yeah, anyway, thank you. That actually moved into my soul, what you said.
Surrounding people with a sense of humor, I think, too, is one of the keys. I've got people around me that are very funny and make me laugh. And so I think keeping a sense of humor and having a team around, it's one of the things I miss the most about being a principal on a campus, having APs and hiring people that, yes, when it's time to work, we're going to work and we're going to be serious about it, but we're also going to have a little levity to things. We're going to laugh at things when things go wrong, and we're going to work to make them better, but we're also going to not take it too seriously, and we're going to make jokes about it, and we're going to move forward. I think that's super important for your mental health too. You got to have people around you that are going to make you laugh. Otherwise,
make you laugh.
Yeah, super important.
Mark Nepo says, joy is not an added feature; it's a sign of deep health.
Oh, really? Oh, I love that.
And I love that for people, but also for systems.
Yeah.
If there's joy in the room, then you can get to work on the hard stuff. If there's not, wave all the red flags.
Yeah. Some of the best ways to do that too is focus on the kids. The adults are the ones that will muck things up sometimes, especially in this profession. So if you can go just hang out and be in a classroom with good teaching that's got kids in it, oh my gosh, it's the best. I miss it as a part of principal too. Just the best part of my day was standing in front of the school and shaking hands as kids came in. I miss that like crazy because I would eventually, over time, you get to know all the kids and literally the best part of your whole day. And I'm very thankful that I got that opportunity. But sense of humor and just being around kids, I think is key to life.
Perfect. Thank you, Tom. Thank you for your wisdom and your work in the world and for taking time to be on the podcast.
Sure. Thanks for having me.
You.
This is super fun.
All right. We are back and anxious to debrief a little and talk about what popped for us from Tom's interview. So, Chris, what stood out to you?
So as I alluded to in the intro, I was very impressed with his vulnerability and willingness to talk about his first year as a principal and the struggle. I think he even used the words, "I was drowning," which is brave to say and to share. And I hope people identified with that if they'd felt that way at some point. But it also led me to think about how, I don't know if alarming is the word, but I guess daunting it would be to go into a role like that with zero training. I mean, the fact that he said he'd never been in an elementary school and he'd not been, in any kind of leadership role like that, to just be thrown in and then receive the training, peppered over the course of his career, that's hard. And I would think that would give me imposter syndrome, even though he'd earned the place to be there. That's just hard.
Yeah.
And it doesn't happen that way as often in the corporate world, which is my experience. And so to think about that, that's a challenge.
Yeah, completely. I loved how open he was about that because I do think a lot of people are going to see themselves in his story and feel like less alone and less crazy. And it is a little bit of an indictment in terms of like, what are we doing with promising leaders? Are we putting them in the role and setting them up for success? Are we just pedaling so fast that there's a little bit of a miss in terms of supporting people as they move up into really different roles that require a really different mindset? Like I loved the baseball thing and what it's like to be that firefighter assistant principal and then pull back and be in the dugout watching the game and giving feedback. That's so right. But if you don't know it, the stories that you create in your own head about your capacity and your willingness to stay in education, I think we probably lose a lot of good people because of the lack of those initial supports that he's so committed to now with his folks. Because
you have been engaged by so many districts to come in and do that level leadership training, but I feel like I've heard you say your work is more at the superintendent level, like that top tier level. Is that common in education to put someone in a principalship role, which is a CEO of a school, without training? Is that normal? I think it's normal. And it's also normal in the nonprofit world. It's almost like you ascend into leadership by accident or because you're a really strong individual contributor. I think it's probably pockets like anywhere. There's pockets where it's very, very intentional, and then other pockets where it's like sink or swim. And in my experience, which is limited, but in my experience, it's never like full on, like just malpractice. It's just, there's so much urgency in every direction in the education space that people are just doing the best that they can, and they see something in a leader and they just are spread so thin in so many directions that like front loading the support gets lost. And it works out as often as it doesn't, like it did with Tom, but boy, how different when folks get that support from the jump and have those skills that he talked about gaining over years earlier. Well, and it worked out for Tom because it sounded like he went and sought out programs and ways to get the knowledge, and I guess had someone who would approve the spending of it, and he did that. But not everybody can hang in there. Right. And the biggest thing that comes up for me around that is who are we losing? Like in a space where we so desperately need all the talent we can get, who are we losing by not having that infrastructure in place to really support folks as they ascend the system? Agreed. What else came up for you? As I was listening to the interview again, and it just jumped off the screen at me how Tom is one of those leaders who is just quietly committed to doing the right thing, to his own growth, to his own learning, to the well-being of those people around him, and just doing that over and over and over again in all the different roles he had, and just how beautiful that is, and how many people are doing that in school systems, and maybe they're not in the spotlight, but they're just quietly committed to doing the right thing and to growing and learning, and what an impact he has had in the system he's in, and then also just
as an example of what a leadership journey can look like. That really jumped.
And he's another who stays very connected to his why. And he said in the beginning, he wanted to do good in the world and he wanted to do something with kids. He wanted to be connected to kids. And he talked about that multiple times. Just take it back to the kids. What's best for the kids? Go be with the kids.
Yeah,
common
his
theme.
countenance fully shifted when he talked about what it's like for him to be in the presence of the kids. Like, it was really profound to be like, oh my gosh, this is just literally coming up in every single interview. The leaders who have been able to stay connected to their why, to the kids, to what's best for kids, a lot of the madness falls off. Mm-hmm. Or doesn't impact them as deeply as folks who maybe lose sight of that.
I think that we should talk about the courage that it takes to say out loud what he said about putting yourself first and the importance of putting yourself first for purpose-based work. And I would love for you to speak to that, because I feel like I still learn that from you. And all the different thought leaders that I read and listen to. I'm a work in progress, but it sounds like he's very committed to that, and I loved it.
You're like, I'm a work in progress, but you have selfish down, so you should speak to
it. In the best way possible.
I'm good with that.
Well, if it tells, I mean, my Aura ring is showing me the actual data from doing that. And it's real. It's a real thing.
Yeah.
And you've just been doing it longer. So
yeah, you could tell he's someone who has switched from, oh, that maybe makes sense for other people, but I'm good, to this is a must. And I agree about the courage it takes for him and people like him to offer a different narrative when the narrative of how much you suffer is equal to how much you care is so in the water. I was really struck by that too. And, for me, the switch happened when I started flirting with the switch when I began to notice that if I didn't, no matter what I said, the people on our team were not going to. And there were people whose nervous systems were more frayed than mine by the pace we were going. And one of my coworkers who was kind enough to say, like, hey, I don't think this is working for everyone. And unless you shift, there's not real permission for other people to shift. So that gave me like the space to begin flirting with it. But it was years of flirting before I then got enough information about the nervous system that then I was like, oh, this is literally the least selfish thing I can do. That this is my number one job, is to live in service of my nervous system and try to be as grounded and resourced as I can be, so that I can show up for other people, and also kind of whenever there's leadership involved too, you're giving that implicit and explicit permission that the system believes that if you are resourced, your natural brilliance will flow through you. And if you're in a fight or flight or shutdown state, or if you're just running on fumes, then what is so easy and natural when you're resourced is just like pulling teeth. It's so much harder, and it doesn't come out as good, which in that case, the kids suffer.
You asked Tom the question, and I believe this is where you used the words cuckoo pants, but That one got me. How you asked the question how that narrative of suffering equates to level of care ever got started. Do you have a theory on that? You asked him his opinion. I was curious about yours.
I mean, this is so half formed that it's almost wrong for me to say it out loud, but in the spirit of that, and not that this is like fact with a capital F, when you think about service-oriented professions, like if you follow it all the way back, it was, see, this is so bad. Katie, you're going to have to cut all this because anyone who can read is going to be like, she is crazy. But hopefully we have some listeners who don't read.
Ricardo. No, just
We know Ricardo reads. At least in the nonprofit space, the beginnings of nonprofit work or service-oriented work was penance. It was like, let's give to the quote unquote poor. Let's give our money. It was penance for the like living on the wild side the rest of the time. And I think some of those threads have just carried through to, if you're in a service-oriented role, you're meant to be in some sort of like extending yourself beyond what's comfortable, sane, or good for you. See, I told you it's so half-baked. We need to bring someone in who can speak to that with much more authority, but
it's interesting. That's interesting. Yeah. I was looking at it from my own vantage point, which was the terrible habit of finding your self-worth in your accomplishments.
Yeah.
Is there a connection there? Because I know I've experienced that over the years.
Oh, completely. And it kind of ties into the imposter syndrome piece. I know I'm thinking about when I moved into a new leadership role years ago, I was so quick to respond, and I was always paying attention to if someone had emailed me, texted me, called me, and I was like Johnny on the spot. As quick as I could, I would respond. And the reason was I felt like, what am I doing in this role? Well, what I do have to offer is very fast response. And same with what you're saying, right? Like what I do have to offer is overextending myself beyond what's comfortable. Or where my value comes in is in achieving to the point of martyrdom. Narratives like that for sure get us.
And Tom even used that word somewhere in his description of what he'd been through, which was interesting. So for educators what would you say to educators who don't work for a Tom who prioritizes self-care? What would someone do if their principal was the person that wanted to be there till midnight or, whatever that might be?
I think it's so case by case, and there's a little bit of villainizing of the younger generations who want that from their lives and ask for that, even if their leadership isn't bought into that. There's a little bit of villainizing that I hear. So I hesitate to have any advice because I think there's some element of like it potentially backfiring on someone in their professional journey if they're not really careful. But one thing I learned from Marcia Clark, who's an incredible leader and does incredible leadership workshops, she said, you always have a next choice. And I think one thing that can help people who are in systems where maybe self-care is not supported or promoted is to not feel stuck. that they have little and big choices, and then they have another little or big choice on the other side of whatever they choose. So it's like, maybe I choose to set a boundary here, and then I can pay attention to what that means in this system, and then I can make my next choice. And in some cases, that'll be, this isn't for me. I can't thrive here. Or in other cases, it might be, I've got to figure out how to get my needs met without calling it that, because it gets weaponized in this system. It's going to be different. It's going to be case by case, but just the freedom of knowing there's autonomy, and all of us always have a next decision we can make after we make a move and see how it lands in whatever system we're in.
When you were leading Momentous, someone came to you and suggested you change your example. What did he or she do right that might be applicable for others in the ask that was made of you or to you?
You know, I think it was a she, Heather, who's one of my favorite people in the world still to this day. And I think she presumed a blind spot, which was true, and just offered something that I could then get curious about. And she knew me well enough to know that I would get curious about it, and that I would be interested in how I impacted the people around me. That's not going to be the case with everyone. So she literally just gently offered, hey, this is how we're functioning, which was, you know, we were moving too fast. And you know, it was like hair blown back all day long, every day. You had to negotiate with yourself if you were going to go pee. You know, it was that kind of pace, which is so normalized in so many systems. And there was a lot of adrenaline, and it was fun, and we were moving mountains. So there was a lot that felt good about it, but she had to say, hey, I'm not sure the pace we're moving at is working for everyone in the system in the way it might feel like it's working for you. And she knew me well enough. We'd worked together 20 years. And so she also said, and I'm not sure it's working for you. And so then that just right. Like, and she was right. And she was right. It was fun. And there were a lot of rewards with it. And I was getting all that adrenaline, but I was simultaneously getting all that cortisol and not paying attention to the impact it was having on me, and certainly not holding the responsibility of the impact it was having on the people on the team. And so, you know, we just got curious about it, and we got curious about it together, and then we just started moving the needle little at a time, and it shifted. It really shifted. And then I watched it shift, cascade through the whole organization, 120 plus people. And I was like, whoa, the level of responsibility for a leader to pay attention to the norms they're setting and to the implicit permission, because explicitly, I never would have expected people to put themselves in any kind of risk or discomfort. I mean, I was a therapist, so I was saying all the right things about boundaries and self-care, but I wasn't practicing it. And so until I changed my relationship with my own well-being, the assumption was we're all moving as fast as Michelle's moving.
That's so interesting. And such, well, it's why Tom did his dissertation on it, right?
Yeah.
Because it impacts the whole organization.
Yeah.
So deeply.
Yeah. And isn't it cool now to know that his role is to mentor and support 7 principals who then are doing that for their teams? And like, it's really, it's fun for me to picture like the cascade of his impact. And the cascade of the commitment he has to his own well-being. I can just imagine how that feels to be supervised and mentored by him.
It's all about going to the cabin for the holiday and hiding out for 3 days, right?
Totally. That's like next level. That's like graduate level
I
self-care. Pretty
know.
impressive.
I loved it. I loved it. Okay, let's talk about funding because he brought it up. And I was curious, Tom, I loved the fact that his response to your question about what do people get wrong was, I don't know, because I've been in this space for so long. And how would you answer that question as it relates to funding? Or how would you elaborate on what he said that he assumes everybody gets as it relates to funding, that there are resources that are tied up and they need those resources?
I mean, it's criminal. It's criminal. Period. End of sentence. We put big-hearted, talented, well-meaning people in an impossible bind if their programs aren't funded to the degree that the expectation is. Like, it's just, to me, that's what leads to burnout more than the hard work. There's a quote like, burnout isn't from hard work, it's from heartache. I feel like the heartache is you expect this from me, but you won't fund me to be able to meet that bar. And that's criminal. It makes me so mad. This is me mad. I'm just furious.
Patrick's lucky. What else came up for you?
Wait, before we move on, what about you? Did you have a thought about that?
I mean, I appreciated him saying it out loud. And I mean, it's what we face in our work, right? Mm-hmm. All the time. It's watching people who are on the front lines that do care about the kids. And those are the people that we luckily get to come into contact with the education system, and watching them get it, see how they can help and make a difference, an important difference just for the world. And then to be told, sorry, Charlie, it explains why so many people are leaving the profession, and that has to change. And as you know, I don't like to just talk about the problem. I like to try to brainstorm solutions. And I do think one of the solutions is what we've talked about all week, which is how do we bring private funding and philanthropic funding to, supplement what's there, because there's a whole lot less red tape to get to that. And we all want the same thing. We want the same outcome, which is, positive. It's just how do we create the model? And to me, it's not that hard. It's there. It's just actually executing on it. And not just talking about the problem, talking about solutions and workarounds and, what do we do today to get the outcomes we want?
I mean, that's one of the many things I love most about you is the sort of like relentless, we will not abandon kids. We will not abandon educators. And we will get creative all day long, every day, until we figure out how to be part of the solution related to expectations and resources being at least more closely aligned. Right now, the expectations placed on educators is through the roof and also a moving target. And the resources is not even close to where it should be. So, yeah, I love your capacity to just be forever optimistic and forever problem solving around how do we get the money flowing, even if it's not from traditional sources.
Thank you.
Well, you're welcome.
I'll pay you 20 later.
I hope so. I thought we agreed on 50. Just kidding.
Okay, one other thing that I thought was really interesting was Tom's acknowledgement that having a working partnership with that office manager of the school is important. I think you know my friend Sunny Noonan, who started the Admin Awards, and she's created a whole business and movement to highlight that executive assistant inside a corporation. And she does this all across the country, these award ceremonies where CEOs nominate their EA and honor that person for what they do inside the organization. And it just, when he said that, I made a direct parallel to that work. And she uses lovely words, but it's well, it's kind of what we've talked about. The people that we're talking to, they're these just, hidden gems of humans, hidden heroes that are driving a lot of the outcomes, but not getting the attention. And that too is an office manager, and that partnership between a principal and office manager.
We should lean on folks listening to give us a great office manager that we could interview.
Oh, that's a good idea.
I would love to hear about their perspective and their view of exactly what you're saying. Because you're
That's a
right.
great
Like,
idea.
such a critical, it's like their capacity to support time management, attention management, calendar management, all of that, and move things forward is invisible, but it's
Especially
critical.
when he described what the day is like for a principal. And we know it's not just a principal, because how many of our meetings with educators get shifted or changed because there's a kid crisis on campus, and that should,
Yeah.
take priority. Absolutely. So that's a lot to juggle.
It's so much to juggle. And is it Covey that talks about the urgent and the important? I think it is. Stephen Covey, he talks about, that most of us get sort of swept up by the urgent, and we fail to deal with the important that moves the organization or the school forward. And I don't know any profession that has more urgent coming at them and more surprises every single day than educators. I mean, it's just, it's completely realistic to get your whole 24 hours consumed by the urgent. So the capacity to, like he talked about, get off campus, see other people doing the work, learn from them, like these, pay attention to how you start your day, like really think about what those first few minutes of a day look like that shape your whole day. Those little tricks he mentioned were so good in terms of creating the conditions for leaders to pay attention, not just to the urgent, but the important.
What else did you want to talk about?
Well, we covered a bunch of it. Let me see if... Oh, I really liked at the end when he talked about the importance of humor and laughter and joy and not taking ourselves too seriously, even though the work is serious. Like, that really resonated.
Same.
And I feel like educators, for the most part, are so good at that. Like, they're so good at, like, dropping in and experiencing the humanity of their job and their day, even though the things they're working on are so serious. But boy, if someone's feeling depleted or really struggling, like, that's probably the quickest shortcut to giving their nervous system the signal that it's safe, is just like infuse some more joy, humor, connection.
And it feels, again, I say this every time, but it feels like a lot of those comments are consistent across the interviews that we've done since we started this podcast. And all of the people that we've talked to really entered the profession for the kids. And I wonder if that, for those who did, and they're in education for all the right reasons, that is their purpose, that is their why, is it easier to access that joy because they're like walking the path that they're meant to walk.
I love that. And I think we should interview someone that hates kids just for variety.
I was going to say that, but I thought that was stepping a little too far.
Which is exactly why I stepped there.
Oh, goodness gracious. We digress. Maybe we should wrap this up.
We should totally. But a huge thanks to Tom. What a stand-up leader. No ego, all about creating the conditions for other people to thrive. Like, just really glad he's in the world.
Also, before we end, on a scale of 1 to 10, how would you rate Tom as a karaokeer?
It depends how drunk I am. I'll leave it at that.
Edit. Well, thank you for that.
I know. We speak the truthiest truth here. We said we would.
Yes, we do. Okay.
Thanks, Chris.
There we go. You're welcome. I enjoyed the time
Thanks,
with you.
Katie. Big thanks to Katie, our producer. And we'll see you all soon. That's it for today's episode of Oxygen for Educators. If you found value in this episode, consider sharing it with a colleague or friend. Please rate and subscribe so we can stay in conversation. And please let us hear from you if you have a suggestion for a topic or know of an educator we should interview. And thanks for all you do out there.